So you want the Packers to win the Super Bowl in 2025? So do we. So here are 5 players that will need to ball out in 2025 to get that done.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson, and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Ralph. So, as always, thanks for being here. If we have any new listeners, welcome to the show. We hope you like what you hear. But we're working on getting 600 subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, please do that. It helps out the show a lot. And, someday when we get to 1,000, we got some new things that we can do for all of you. But we are excited to be here talking. Just remember that we do have new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So if you can't catch us on your normal, YouTube channel, you're driving in the car, make sure to check out one of those other platforms, and then you never have to miss an episode. But today we are talking about 5 players who really need to have big seasons in 2025 or to ball out to get us back to the promised land and win the Super Bowl. So couple quick rules of engagement. We did not include any rookies on this list. So if you're hoping to hear us say that Matthew Golden needs to be 1,000-yard wide receiver and the savior of this offense, that's not going to happen on this show. Let's be realistic, right? We are also, that would be amazing. And if that happens, then we're in good shape. But that'd be more of a bonus. Hell yeah, then this needs to happen. And then, we didn't put any of the 2025 Pro Bowlers, Jacobs, McKinney, or Gary on this list. They need to show up and do that job again. And then we need to add another 2, 3, 4 guys in that Pro Bowl group. Because, every year it seems like the teams that win the Super Bowl, they've got 5, 6, 7 of those guys on their roster, right? So yeah, we will jump into the list, and Rob is going to give you the one that I think most people would expect to be on this list. So let's talk about him.
Yeah, Mr. Jordan Love. What ended up being a little bit of a, I guess, quote unquote, down year for him. Now, whether you want to blame that on injuries and his health, because I do believe that the knee had a big part and some of him not playing up to as well as he did down the stretch in 2023. Or
and then
if
the
you
groin
want,
injury, right?
yeah, and the groin injury too as well. Yep, correct. And then the wide receivers, dropping the ball ad nauseum. So there's definitely a lot of that, but still, there is a lot of room of improvement still for Jordan Love, right? So in 2023, he had 32 touchdowns in 2023. In 2024, 25 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. The Packers didn't invest in $220 million for good enough, but I feel like a lot of this comes down to a couple of things. And I do think that the health, like I was just alluding to, was big in there. The wide receivers and the stretch down that play, I think, really ended up hampering Jordan Love, right? I think there was a lot of 50-50 balls that some wide receivers could have had chances to come down with that they didn't. I think his injury and then bringing in Josh Jacobs, or that workhorse, and really kind of transitioning this offense to more of a run first, pass second type of offense. And we don't think that that's probably changing, even though Jordan and I probably have some biases or some different takes on maybe this offense does succeed better as a pass first, run second, or marry it up with really good run or play action, on top of that. But I think that that's a couple of things there as well. I do think that an element of speed, so Savion, big and fast, and Matthew Golden, McCole Hardman, who we signed, being able to stretch the field, which will open up more of your intermediate type of passes. I was listening to another podcast, and they had said that his intermediate passes had dropped about I think it was around
Mhm.
10 to 15%, which is pretty staggering. It took him out from the top 10 quarterback play to out of 32 quarterbacks, and it was in the late 30s for that metric specifically. So, and you all could probably agree with that, right? Like the lack of speed. If you're really not taking that safeties with you, if they don't feel that threat of that speed or being able to take the top off a defense, a lot of that stuff won't open up underneath. So then it comes down to a game of, hey, can your wide receivers win your one-on-one matchups slash man coverage matchups? And Jordan, I'm sure, I know you would agree that they did not do that good of a job of doing that last year. I think there's some other elements I think that Jordan Love could include into his game that would make him a little bit more successful. I'm not saying he needs to be Lamar Jackson or Malik Willis for that matter, but adding in an element to him being able to take off at sometimes. He is pretty reliant at staying in the pocket. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. We've seen, that be very successful, i.e., Tom Brady. I just think having that element that he could do that a time or two or four or five during a game could really help him take off. So, with all that in the aggregate, that's kind of my burning profile on Jordan Love and why I think, obviously, for this Packers offense, if he takes the next step and balls out this year, the Packers should go far.
Yeah, you hit on a lot of really good points. And not only like the receivers need to help him by getting open in that intermediate game, but he needs to trust his throws there. I think that Jordan Love in this offense was that kind of led the league in shot plays last year. And I think he trusts his guys almost too much. He's like, oh yeah, like there's that Dontavian Wicks is open for that 20-yard strike, but like Christian Watson's streaking down the field and I know he's gonna win one-on-one, right? So he throws that deep ball up there. But like I think he just needs to take some more of those intermediate throws consistently to just kind of get this offense jump started, right? And we saw some of those bonehead plays too, So I think he just needs to improve his decision making in general, right? I know in the Lions game, he said he didn't see the Lions defender that he threw that pick six on or whatever, which yeah, I think if you look at the angle from the all 22, I'd probably believe him. But we saw that happen a couple times, so he needs to shore that up. And if he does and he takes care of the ball, we're going to be in good shape. So I do want to just touch on a side point though, and I won't be long, but we've talked about this on the show and you alluded to it, Rob, a little bit is like, we think the Packers are best if they open up the run game through the passing game. And, I've mentioned this a couple times. My philosophy now more than ever is that for whatever reason, when teams are good in the NFL, they're good for the reasons that they've always been good. And the teams that like want to evolve into something else, just be who you are, right? And we've been a pass first. We draft and develop quarterbacks and wide receivers well. And it's amazing to have Josh Jacobs and this running game to pair with that. But, if the Bears are good, they've got great linebackers. They're playing outstanding defense, right? If the Steelers or the Ravens are good, that's kind of their bread and butter too, So it's just like, let's own our history a little bit and lean into that. And, I'm all for getting Josh Jacobs going as well. So next guy on this list, and I'm really hoping that by the end of this season that he doesn't take this title. We always usually have a public enemy number one, and this guy could be public enemy number one
He's for
after this
sure
season.
public enemy number one. Yes.
And maybe not right now, but he will be if he
Yep.
doesn't perform well this year, most definitely. And that's Lucas Van Ness. And, I think this is another one that most of you listening will probably agree with, that if he steps up and balls out in 2025, that we're going to be in pretty good shape, right? So, last year, he only had 20 pressures and 4 sacks. And, the potential's there. You see that. But just imagine if he gave you a 50 pressure, 8 sack season to pair with Rashawn Gary, our internal pressure, what we expect from Edgerrin Cooper now, getting that presence. And Goody's invested in this. He's hedged his bets and he's put his stamp on Lucas Van Ness. So now he needs to perform. And he doesn't need to be a 12 sack Pro Bowler, but he does need to improve his efficiency. You know, he started out the year really good against the run, and I don't know if it was scheme heavy, but he ended up pretty poor against the run in the second half of the season too, which I think maybe limited his ability to be on the field as well. So he does need to improve against the run, get stronger there, get better at contain so he can be a 3-down player. Otherwise, you know, he's not going to get the snaps that are going to, you know, make him that effective first round pick as well. So, you know, I think that's all like the straightforward stuff with Lucas Van Ness. He's brimming with potential, and it's year 3. It's time for that big year 3 jump. So let's hopefully see it. I don't know if you have anything about
I mean, we just talked about Jordan Love putting all the chips on the table for Jordan Love, right? They're obviously doing that same for Lucas Van Ness, minus Baron Sorrell, right? But we don't know how much he will contribute this upcoming year. You would love to think that he'll contribute quite a bit. Yeah, Gary really took off in his third year and was considered more of a project, especially when he was coming out of Michigan. They did kind of use him a little bit all over the line, more of an edge, but he did move inside at some points too. I remember watching some Michigan games, but I was like, why the heck did they take him? That guy was not productive in college, and ended up being a pretty damn good player, right? You can all say what you want to say about last year, but I really kind of allude that to more of leaning into Hafley's new scheme and what that meant for stopping the run, which they did a hell of a job for. And there towards the end of the year, I felt really Gary was really coming on specifically. So yeah, I mean, for me, and I'm sure you see it though too, like he's got to get more polished in his pass rush repertoire. His
Mm-hmm.
bull rush is just, you just know it's coming, right? Like, and these
Mm-hmm.
are big offensive linemen that like Belton or anybody from the Eagles line or what are these kind of behemoths. You bull rush, dude, I'm just going to put my hand into you, stamp you, and you're going to be stopped right in there in your track. So I really hope Covington, and crew can really work on him and develop a better plan of attack for him for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Because if Gary is going to continue getting a little bit of some of those double teams as well, Van Ness is probably going to end up getting those one-on-ones, and he has to win those one-on-ones this year for us to be successful.
Yeah, great point, Rob. And I think it's like, this was I listened to other Packers podcasts, but on Peter Bukowski's Locked On, he did an interview with CJ West, incoming rookie, and that was a great interview and that's one of the reasons I really wanted to draft CJ West, is he sounded like a very intelligent guy, but he talked about needing to have a pass rush plan for every snap, and I think that's what you're alluding to. Like, for sure, I really hope that he worked on at least one counter move, a spin, a rip, a push and pull, something. He's got to come up with something. So we're
Yep.
not going to beat a dead horse there. But yeah, our next guy is Edgerrin Cooper.
You might be all kind of thinking, well, why is he on here? Edgerrin Cooper really didn't get thrust into the starting lineup until late in the year. Was tremendously good. He had an 84 PFF grade, on 489 snaps, 4 sacks. And then he ended up taking that job full time, right? But a healthy all year long Edgerrin Cooper that can continue to develop, prove that wasn't like an outlier type of run of the mill for him. Continue to put that stamp on his consistency. Hopefully, continue to elevate Quay Walker's game with him too, and the other linebackers for that matter. But if we can get a really good stud or star linebacker there in the middle, if he can continue to prove that he's a star and continue evolving, continuing getting better, I really think Edgerrin Cooper is going to he already seems like lightning in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Especially him running down running backs. The blitz packages that they put him in were very unique. I only feel like that's going to take a step or two forward this year, so I'm really, really excited to see what that looks like. Maybe just for him and like Colin Oliver. My goodness, man, that would be really difficult on an
Mm-hmm.
opposing offense's 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 10. But that'll be that you can just do some really fun stuff with him. So and then too, like if he can, continue to prove that he's an asset in the run game and tackle well, and at least get his not saying he's got to be the best run stuffer, right? He probably doesn't have the weight, to be really that Sam linebacker, nor are you asking him to. But if he can get in there, give effort, give consistency, he's going to be a hard man to take off the field and really continue to elevate this defense.
Yeah, there's some strategy to this too, right? Lucas Van Ness was before, but like if our defense is going to be a top 10 defense, solid top 10 defense, and that's how we finished last year, but we need a playmaker at all three levels, right? So whether that's Rashawn Gary or Lucas Van Ness stepping up, right? Like we're hopefully if Gary's that guy, then we're there. But we've been lacking that playmaker at the second level for a while, and we've hoped it's going to be Quay. And I still think there's more in Quay, as you've mentioned. But if Edgerrin Cooper becomes that star linebacker, now we have Xavier McKinney at the back. We had Edgerrin Cooper at the second level. I mean, this defense is going to be a handful at that point in time. And in order for him to ball out, there was a lot of conversation too last year about his preparation, work ethic, whatever. There was something, they could see the talent, but there was something holding him back from taking that job. So hopefully he's learned how to be a professional. And that's just whatever we saw in the last 8 games of last year, we're going to see in 2025. And if we do, look out, man. So the next person we're going to get to, but the conversation really is about 3 people, but we're going to pick one. But Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs, and Dontavian Wicks. So clearly we need a wide receiver to step up and take the reins. And we're not even going to start early in the season about who's going to be wide receiver 1. We don't want Matt LaFleur to hear this and vomit. But, so Jayden Reed last year obviously struggled against man coverage in the second half of the season. He had, he led the team in drops, which there was a lot of conversation about other guys, but his 10 drops, he did not have a strong second half of the year, right? We have Romeo Doubs. You've got all of his, his things, if you want to call it baggage. He's got his concussion history now. He had the suspension, but really, if you take Romeo Doubs' season, I got his stats up here right now. He played in 13 games. He started 12. So he had 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. So if he would have played 14 games, if he would have played, 16 or 17 games, he likely would have had like an 800 yard, 6 or 7 yard touchdown season. I don't think that we would really be having that much conversation about Romeo right now. And he does have the most dependable hands. However, he still had 5 drops to add to the problem of the whole wide receiver group, right? And then there's Dontavian Wicks. A lot of conversation about Wicks. Hopefully he makes a big year 3 jump, but he did have a significant drop off from 2023 in his rookie season. Not only his PFF grade, which as a rookie, he had a 78.4 PFF grade that dropped to 65.3 in 2024, but his across the board statistics dropped too. He had only 415 yards. He did have an extra touchdown last year. His reception total was the same, but he got a whole lot more targets. He had 39 receptions in both seasons, but in 2023 he had 58 targets and he had 76 targets in 2024. So he is being looked at by Jordan Love because he's open. He's open a lot, but he needs to catch the ball. So it'd be great if all 3 of these guys took a step forward. Really, if they took a step back towards all of their 2023 forms, and then we get something out of Matthew Golden, we're like in a really good shape. But we got to play the game though. We got to name a guy, right? We can't just like give you the whole roster. So like, which one of these guys are you putting the pressure on to ball out in 2025 to have that playmaker on offense to go along with Josh Jacobs and Tucker Kraft?
That's got to be Jayden Reed. I mean, the drops alone would tell you that he needs to be able to get better. With Christian Watson sideline, right? Reed's the next man up, man. He needs to step it up, right? Like you were mentioning too the back half of last year as well, but a troubling trend, from that too. And this is a stat that I was like, my goodness, he had only just one 55 plus yard game in the final 2 months of the season last year.
Oof.
If that doesn't put a bow on the Jayden Reed conversation, and that tells me one thing: defense adjusted. They adjusted well, and they didn't have a plan of attack for him, or what they tried to do with him, and especially in man
Mm-hmm.
coverage, he just couldn't get open, right? So if let's just say this, because rookies come in and rookies can be rookies sometimes, right? Not all rookies come in and just start flying away like your Cooper DeJeans or whatever else of the worlds, right? But if Golden's development does take time, right, and neither Dobbs nor Wicks makes a significant leap, Reed could face consistent double teams with nowhere for Love to go with the football, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least on some of those options and some of those plays. So you could point to the other one, and I think it kind of has a waterfall effect. I think that you would agree, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think if one plays well, it kind of trickles down to the opening up the other player, right? And they kind of feed off each other. And if one is playing well,
Mm-hmm.
or one is opening up something well, or playing that play and that scheme for what is called, they're going to open up other types of playmakers in the wide receiver room too as well. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 10 drops, man. Like did we lead the league in drops? If not, we were pretty close up there, I believe.
I think we did. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, I think it's time, right? When was it for Adams and for Nelson? Was it year 3? I think it was pretty close for
Most
them to
most
go.
of our guys took off in like year 3 or year 4. Nelson did, Adams did. You know, I think Jennings and Cobb kind of hit in year 2. But
Yep.
you know, he's prime to get there. I will note though, and this has been I think Andy Herman talked about this on his podcast. Like those three those three guys were, or maybe it was Peter Bukowski, I don't know. It was one of the guys I would listen to regularly, noted that like all three of those guys were within like 6 targets of each other. So, I think Wicks had the most targets with 76, and Dobbs had like, I think it was Dobbs. It was one of them. One of them about like 70 targets, right? So I think there is a little bit of pressure on one of these guys to step up and say, hey, I'm that guy that you need to throw at 90, 100 times, force Matt LaFleur's hand. And, that's not to say that you can't distribute to the other guys. But if Jayden Reed can be the guy that says, you know what, I deserve 90 targets in this offense and I will reward you steadily, you know, and then I think the addition of Savion Williams and maybe McCole Hardman, if he sticks on the roster. I know Rob and I have a varying opinion about that right now. Listen to our last episode if you want to hear that conversation. Well, actually, 2 episodes ago, on the 53-man roster, way too early 53-man roster prediction. Um, but maybe Reed can become more consistent in the passing game if you're, not asking him to do so much with the orbit motion and jet sweeps and things like that. I mean, you're taking a lot of juice running him laterally across the field, right? So maybe somebody else can do that and he can be a downfield threat.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's the wide receiver then for you, Jordan?
We'll be in agreement. We'll go
With
with
Reed?
Jayden
Okay.
Reed.
Got it.
Bottom line is one of these guys gotta step up, and if they all do, we're in a great position. So, and then we'll transition into the last thing, right? There's a lot of guys that could be candidates for this, and you probably have one or two in your mind that we haven't talked about, right? Like, I'm gonna stay away from Tucker Kraft because I kind of like, he's not a Pro Bowler, but like, I expect him to continue to make incremental progress forward. But Kenny Clark could be on this list. Jaire Alexander could be on this list if he's on the team. You could make the argument that Rasheed Walker really needs to solidify himself, not commit so many penalties, be a top 10 left tackle in this league. But really, we're going to put the pressure on 2 former first round picks from the same draft. We are going to again settle on one, but these 2 guys are kind of linked, Quay Walker and Devonte Wyatt. So, Quay Walker has kind of tried to develop, and we saw, some good flashes from him last year. Edgerrin Cooper's development would really help with that, take some of that pressure off him. But I know we really kind of settled on Devonte Wyatt. So, why Devonte Wyatt, Rob, being the guy, the fifth guy that really needs to ball out this year?
Pass rush.
Yeah.
I mean,
Simple answer.
yeah, not to, completely dumb it down or simplify it. Sometimes I think you just need that. We need pass rush, and interior, outside, the other side, interior, and outside. We'll take all the pass rush anybody can give us. I mean, so like Devon, and obviously the Packers showed it too. They're giving him his, fifth year signed off on his fifth year, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he has shown just flashes of brilliance, right? Like just for him, it's the consistency. What can he do to get himself in game shape, or how can they best utilize him so that he can stay healthy throughout a season? I know that that's probably a whole nother episode and conversation on preparing, body management, working out, hydration, nutrition, all that sort of stuff, right? So I won't get in kind of that kind of nuanced discussion, but
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes some guys just can't stay healthy. But honestly, Jordan, to me, providing more pass rush, from Devonte Wyatt, Carl Brooks, whatever it is, just on that interior, or you like if you're talking more of your draft pick capital and Warren Brinson, or your Stackhouse, maybe more of your nose tackle. I think that just makes it really difficult on the opposing team's quarterback, gets him off his spot, and lets those other edge rushers or other blitzers, middle linebackers, be able to collapse the pocket and get to that quarterback more effectively.
Yeah, and I think the thing that he needs to do to be on the field more to make his pass rush effective is he just needs to improve his run grade, right? So,
Yep.
I would say the PFF run grade, but he needs to improve himself against the run. I think there were times that he was taken off the field out of rotation in favor of somebody else, the TJ Slaytons of the world. And, you're going to sub out in goal line, packages and stuff anyways to bring a guy like that in. But, if he can diversify himself a little bit more, get a little bit stronger, a little bit more stout against the run, you get him on the field more often. And then, he's just got a chance to cook at that point in time. So, last year, I think he had 5 sacks and 32 pressures. And you might have said that already. I got distracted here for a second. But, if he can be a guy who can bring, like 50 pressures from the interior, and an interior pressure is crippling to an offense, right? There's a lot of quarterbacks that can, when pressure comes from the outside, they can step up. Jared Goff has gotten extremely good at that. But when the pressure comes from within and there's chaos there, I mean, that's just a game disruptor. So that's why we settled on Devonte Wyatt as the fifth guy to ball out on this list. And, in the best case scenario, LVN and Wyatt both step up and Rashawn Gary does what Rashawn Gary does. And, that whole pass rush conversation that we had most of last season is out the window. So,
Yeah. Well, Packers fans, let us know what you think too with all this. Maybe there's a player, we listed here, quickly some other options and different routes that we maybe, had some consideration for, but, let us know your thoughts. Who are the player or players for you that you think need to ball out and why? If you want to go ahead and do chalk and do, someone that a lot of Packers fans would think, or if you don't want to do that, that's fine as well. We'd love to hear from you either way.
give me your best argument on Daniel Whalen and why he needs to ball out in 2025.
Please, somebody give me that argument. I beg you. All right, Packers fans. That's all we have for you today. Just know that we do have more content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. As you can see below here on the banner, we are on the social as well. I'm at Sounds Gouda and Jordan is at Olson Jord. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, so make sure to follow us there too as well, and help us out. We're trying to get to 600 followers, so anything that you can do, or if you have been listening for a while and you haven't subscribed yet, we would greatly appreciate that. But until next time, Packers fans, we hope that you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Go Pack Go.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the